My photo appeared on a website for missing people, but I've never been missing. It started with something so small that I almost ignored it. I was sitting on the couch in my apartment, eating cold leftover pasta, half watching a true crime documentary on my laptop while scrolling through my phone. It was a Tuesday night, the kind where the silence feels too loud, and you feel like you're floating through your own life. The algorithm had served me a post from a local subreddit I didn't even remember following. It was a link to a website listing cold cases, missing persons from across the country. The caption read something like, "Look at how many of these cases are still open. Heartbreaking." I clicked, out of boredom more than anything. The website was poorly designed, the kind that looks like it hadn't been updated since the early 2000s, gray background, blue hyperlinks, photos that took too long to load. I scrolled without thinking, eyes barely focusing. Until they did. There it was. My face. At least I thought it was. I stared at the image. The photo was grainy, clearly scanned from an older picture, but unmistakably familiar. The girl in the photo couldn't have been more than 8 or 9. She had the same crooked smile I saw in my old school photos, the same narrow chin, the same freckle under her left eye. It felt like looking into the past, but a past I didn't remember. The name listed was Emily Harper. Age when missing, 9. Last seen, Cedar Falls, Iowa. Date missing, July 3, 2005. That didn't make sense. I wasn't Emily Harper. My name was Claire Martin. I had never been to Iowa. I'd never been missing. My childhood had been uneventful, boring even. Raised in Ohio by 2 overprotective parents who kept track of every step I took. I had baby pictures, birthday videos, report cards, drawings from first grade. There was no room for mystery. Still, the resemblance was disturbing. I even tilted my head the same way she did in the photo. Something about it scratched at the edges of my memory. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I hadn't really slept. I couldn't stop thinking about that photo, the girl who looked like me but wasn't me. Or maybe was. I pulled the website back up and stared at it again in the daylight. There were dozens of missing children listed, but none hit like Emily Harper. Her picture, next to the cold caption, "Still missing," did something to my stomach I couldn't explain. My thoughts spun in circles. What if it was just a coincidence? What if she was a distant cousin I didn't know about? Or what if, and this one I couldn't shake, what if I was her? That last thought was ridiculous. Wasn't it? To prove how ridiculous it was, I went looking through my old photo albums. My mom had always been obsessive about documenting everything, and we had boxes of labeled prints from disposable cameras. Birthday parties, school field trips, vacations. I pulled out a heavy blue binder labeled Claire, age 5 to 10, and flipped through. There were photos of me in our backyard, holding sparklers on the 4th of July. Me in a ballerina outfit for a recital I barely remembered. Me with a missing tooth, grinning wide in front of a Christmas tree. But something started to bother me the deeper I went. There weren't any candid photos. Everything was posed. Clean. Almost too neat. I hadn't noticed before how all the pictures felt staged, like a catalog of someone trying to prove something. No mess. No chaos. No blurry moments. And then, a more unsettling realization. There were no hospital photos, none of me as a newborn, nothing from before age 5, and no pregnancy photos of my mom, even though she kept everything else, even receipts from my first haircut. I flipped through more albums, hands trembling slightly. All the early pictures, kindergarten and younger, looked off. The lighting, the quality, even the furniture in the background felt generic, like a waiting room or a model home. My heart thudded in my chest. I opened my laptop again and searched Emily Harper missing on Google. This time I found an old news article archived on a local Iowa newspaper site. The article was dated July 2005. It said the girl had vanished from a campground while on a trip with her mother. No leads. No witnesses. Just gone. A part of me whispered, "That girl is you." I slammed the laptop shut. I couldn't unsee it anymore. The face in the photo wasn't just similar, it was mine. Same gap in the eyebrows. Same dimple on one cheek. Same subtle asymmetry in the jawline I'd always noticed in mirrors, but never saw in anyone else. I tried to distract myself. I went for a walk. I scrolled social media. I cleaned the kitchen. But no matter what I did, I kept coming back to one thing. Where are the photos from before I was 5? When my parents got home that evening, I pretended everything was fine. I watched them like a stranger would, like an outsider trying to understand two people they didn't really know. Every word they said felt rehearsed. Every gesture, too smooth. Too careful. I brought up an old friend from preschool, just to test. Hey, remember Sophie? From kindergarten. My mom blinked. Of course, honey. Sophie with the curly hair. I nodded. Yeah. I was trying to remember her last name. Do you know it? My mom paused for just a moment too long. Henderson, I think? Or maybe Hendricks. That moment, that flicker of uncertainty, lit something cold inside me. She'd always known everything. Every detail. My teachers' names. My lunch orders. Suddenly, she didn't know? Later that night, when the house was quiet, I did something I never imagined I'd do. I broke into the locked box in my parents' closet. I'd seen it for years, a heavy black fireproof safe tucked under winter sweaters. I always assumed it held insurance papers or tax files, but now I needed to know. I'd seen my dad open it once, and I remember the code, the date of their anniversary. When it clicked open, I froze. Inside were folders, manila envelopes, a few old documents. But buried beneath the paperwork was something that made my hands go numb. A birth certificate. Not mine. It said, name, Emily Rose Harper. Date of birth, July 14th, 2000. Mother, Rachel Harper. Father. Place of birth, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I stared at it like it might vanish. Because my name, my real name, was supposed to be Claire. The name Emily Rose Harper rang no bells. But the date of birth matched mine exactly, July 14th, 2000. The weight in my chest grew heavier with each breath. My fingers trembled as I flipped through the rest of the documents. There were hospital forms, vaccination records, all under Emily's name, all dated before I turned 5, the age when my official memory started. After that, everything had been under Claire. My school ID, my pediatrician files, my passport. Why 2 names? Why 2 identities? I found a faded photo tucked in the back of the folder, a picture of a woman holding a toddler. The woman looked tired, worn out, but familiar. Too familiar. She looked like me. Not the way moms often look like their daughters. No, she looked exactly like me. Same cheekbones. Same dark lashes. Same subtle scar above the left eyebrow. I flipped the photo over. In shaky handwriting it read, Me and M, last summer, before everything changed. I didn't recognize the handwriting. It wasn't my mom's. I stayed up all night on my bedroom floor, documents scattered around me like the ashes of my past. I stared at my ceiling in the dark, trying to remember anything before the age of 5. Nothing came, not a single clear memory. Just flashes, like dreams I wasn't sure were mine. A park with red swings, a woman singing out of tune, a car ride at night, stars blurring past. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I searched the name Emily Rose Harper online. Nothing came up immediately, but then I added missing person next to the name. And there it was, a page from a now-defunct blog about missing children. A single post, dated 2005, titled, Where is Emily Harper? My heart stopped. There was a scan flyer in the post. And the photo, the same one I found in the locked box. The toddler in the woman's arms. It was me. I stared at the flyer on the blog, my vision swimming. The caption under the photo said, Emily Harper, age 5, missing from Colorado Springs since July 2005. Last seen with her mother, Nicole Harper. Any information, please contact. I didn't even read the rest. My skin crawled with a coldness that seemed to rise from somewhere deep inside me. I wasn't looking at a stranger's face. I was looking at my face. I wasn't missing. I wasn't kidnapped. I wasn't Emily. And yet, all of that was true. I clicked through the site, hoping for an update, hoping someone had found her, hoping this could be explained away as some crazy coincidence, an internet error, a mistaken photo, a cruel joke. But there were no updates, no comments, no closure, just a thread that ended 20 years ago with silence. That day I skipped class. I couldn't bear to sit through lectures or pretend to be fine. I went to the library and spent hours searching everything I could about Nicole Harper, about the case, about Colorado Springs in 2005. The internet was sparse on details. The world had moved on. But I hadn't. I printed the flyer and carried it home with me, folded tightly in my pocket like a secret. That night, I confronted my mom. Only I didn't say a word. I just placed the flyer on the kitchen table and watched her face. She looked at it. Her eyes scanned it, and her hand trembled as she reached for the edge of the paper. She didn't ask where I got it. She didn't deny it. She just sat down. And for the first time in my life, my mother looked afraid of me. She didn't speak for a long time. She just sat there, staring at the flyer like it was a ghost clawing up from her past. The clock on the wall ticked in slow, hollow beats. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. "Finally," she said, in a voice I barely recognized. I thought I burned everything. No denial. No confusion. Just resignation. She picked up the paper gently, as if it were made of glass, and set it back down like it burned her fingers. "Where did you find it?" she asked. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. We both knew it didn't matter anymore. She nodded, eyes glazed. Then she said something I never expected. "You were never supposed to remember." That sentence shattered something inside me. My mind was a whirlwind of possibilities, each darker than the last. Was I stolen? Was I taken from someone who loved me? Was my whole life built on someone else's pain? But my mother, no, the woman who raised me, just leaned back in her chair and whispered, "I saved you." Those 3 words were worse than any confession, because they meant she didn't regret it. She told me her version slowly, like pulling thorns out of old wounds. She had met my real mother, Nicole, at a battered women's shelter in early 2005. Nicole had been running from someone dangerous, violent, obsessed. She didn't say who. Maybe a partner. Maybe someone else. Nicole had a little girl. Me. Emily. We were always together, she said. A shy, quiet child. I didn't talk much. I followed my mother everywhere. One night, there was panic at the shelter. Nicole was gone. The staff assumed she fled again, like many did. But I was still there. Alone. Forgotten. Or left behind. That part she never made clear. But she took me. She didn't tell anyone. Not even her own mother. She just packed me into her car, drove across 2 states, and changed everything. My name, my birthday, even my past. She said it was the only way to protect me. You wouldn't have survived the life she was running from. That's what she kept saying. Like a mantra. Like a justification. But I wasn't listening anymore. Because suddenly, I didn't know who I hated more, the woman who took me, or the woman who left me behind. After that night, everything I looked at felt like it had 2 meanings, the one I always believed, and the one hiding underneath. The family photos, lies. The childhood drawings she kept in a box under her bed, fabrications. The nickname she used for me, probably not even mine to begin with. I started questioning everything, including myself. Who was I really? Where did I come from? Who had I been before she renamed me, redressed me, rewrote my story? She had taken me at such a young age, erased my identity, buried it like a dead thing. And now I was trying to exhume it, one memory at a time. I started researching Nicole, my real mother. It wasn't easy. There were too many women with that name, and no last name to go by. But then I remembered something odd. Once, years ago, I had drawn a picture of a woman with curly red hair and the name, Nikki, written under it. She'd found it and ripped it up. At the time, I thought it was just bad art. Now I realized it was a memory she tried to suppress. Armed with that name and the old flyer, I searched through every missing persons database, every cold case file, every Reddit thread and dark corner of the web where obsessed internet sleuths kept forgotten names alive. And one night I found her, Nicole Danvers, missing since February 2005, age 28, last seen with her 4-year-old daughter, Emily Danvers. My name, my face, my truth. They had a digitally aged image of what Emily might look like now, and it looked like me. Not just a little. Almost exactly. It was horrifying. Because I wasn't missing. I was right here. I had just been erased. Now I had a name, not just a ghost of a girl, but a full identity. Emily Danvers. I whispered it to myself in the mirror late at night, trying to recognize the sound. It didn't feel like mine yet, but it also didn't feel wrong. I couldn't go to the police. What was I supposed to say? Hi, I think I'm a missing child from 20 years ago, raised by someone else, and I just found out last week. Without evidence, without DNA, without anything concrete, I'd sound delusional. And worse, what if they believed me? That would mean everything would unravel. My mom, the woman who raised me, could be arrested. My life would be dissected. I'd be exposed to the world as a victim of kidnapping, a walking headline. But the need for truth was stronger than fear. I began going through the attic, the garage, every drawer and photo album in the house. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for, just some kind of proof that I hadn't imagined it all. And then I found it. Tucked into an old shoebox, behind a stack of yearbooks, was a faded photograph. It was me, younger, maybe 3 years old, standing beside a woman I had never seen before in real life, but instantly recognized. Nicole. Her face was rounder then, her smile brighter, her hand resting gently on my shoulder. There was love in that photo. Not fear. Not guilt. Not secrecy. And scribbled on the back, in handwriting that definitely wasn't my mother's, were the words. Me and M, July 04, Broadmoor Park. I sat there shaking, staring at it for a long time. This wasn't just memory. This was real. Physical. Undeniable. But there was one question that chilled me more than anything else. If my real mom loved me, what happened to her? The question haunted me relentlessly. What happened to Nicole? How did she vanish without a trace, leaving me behind? I scoured every news archive, every blog comment, every obscure post on forums dedicated to missing persons. The trail was cold, almost erased. There were rumors, whispers of a violent partner, a protective order, a last-ditch escape plan gone wrong. One thread on a crime forum caught my eye. An anonymous poster claimed that Nicole had been seen once after she disappeared. In a small town several hours from here. Alone. Looking terrified. No child with her. Why leave me? Or had I been taken from her forcibly? Was I a hostage, a bargaining chip, or something else entirely? I reached out to a private investigator, someone who specialized in cold cases. I couldn't tell him the whole truth, not yet. But I gave him the details. Names, dates, locations. I told him I needed to find Nicole Harper, or Danvers. Someone who could explain. Days later, I got a call. He'd found something. A witness who remembered a woman matching Nicole's description, meeting a man in a parking lot on the night she vanished. He said the witness had been afraid to come forward before. Something about threats. About people who wanted to keep her silent. I felt a shiver run down my spine. This was no accident. No simple disappearance. It was a story still being written, with me trapped in the middle, a girl whose photo haunted websites and whose life was a puzzle missing the most crucial piece. I was determined to find out the truth, no matter the cost. The private investigator's words kept echoing in my mind. Threats, silence, shadows lurking where I never expected. This wasn't just a simple missing persons case anymore. It was a tangled web of lies, fear and danger, and somehow, I was caught right in the middle of it. My days blurred together between searching for answers and battling creeping paranoia. I started keeping a detailed journal, not just notes, but an exhaustive record of every strange occurrence. Every unanswered phone call, every message from an unknown number, every time I felt someone watching me. My phone became a lifeline and a weapon. I recorded calls, took pictures of suspicious cars parked near my apartment, and logged every little detail. One night, after a grueling day at work, I stepped outside and noticed a black car idling across the street. Its windows were tinted so dark I couldn't see inside, but something about it screamed danger. I froze. The car stayed there for what felt like an eternity, engine idling softly. When I pulled out my phone to snap a photo, the car sped off, disappearing into the night like a shadow slipping away. That wasn't the first time. It followed me sometimes when I left work, when I ran errands, even when I went to the grocery store. At first, I told myself it was coincidence. Maybe a neighbor, or some random person. But deep down, I knew better. Someone was watching me. Someone who wanted me to stop digging. Fear settled in like a thick fog, an unwelcome but constant companion. I called the private investigator, my voice shaky as I told him everything. "They don't want you digging," he warned. "Stay safe. You don't know who you're dealing with." But stopping wasn't an option anymore. Every day, I peeled back more layers of the past, uncovering pieces that made my head spin. The picture of my real mother, Nicole, now felt like a ghost haunting my every step. Why had she disappeared? Why was her life stolen from me? And more importantly, who had tried to erase me? That night, standing alone in my small, dimly lit apartment, I looked into the mirror. The reflection staring back wasn't just Claire Martin, the girl who had lived a normal life. It was Emily Danvers, a girl stolen, hidden, reborn. I whispered to myself, barely audible, "Emily, I'm coming home." It was a promise, a warning, a declaration. Because whatever darkness was waiting beneath all of this, I was ready to face it, no matter the cost. The next days felt surreal, like I was walking through a fog I couldn't clear. Every familiar corner of my life suddenly looked foreign, twisted by the weight of secrets I never asked to uncover. I kept replaying the conversation with the private investigator over and over. "Stay alert," he said. "There are people who want to keep this buried. They won't hesitate to silence anyone who gets too close." The paranoia tightened its grip. I stopped going out alone at night. I changed my usual routes. I avoided answering calls from unknown numbers. Even the smallest noises in my apartment made my heart race. Every shadow felt like a threat. But despite the fear, I was obsessed. The need to know my true story was a hunger that swallowed everything else. I dug deeper into Nicole's past, scouring online archives, court records, social media scraps. She had been on the run, but from what? I found hints of a violent ex-partner, warnings filed with the police, orders of protection. There were whispers of abuse, but no clear end. And then came a small, cryptic clue. A name linked to Nicole's past, one I hadn't seen before. A man named Thomas Reed. No direct connection, but a pattern began to emerge. All the places Nicole had been, all the danger she'd faced, somehow led back to him. I tried to find out more, but every time I got close, the trail went cold. Social media accounts deleted, phone numbers disconnected. People who once knew Nicole refused to talk. My own mother, the woman who raised me, grew distant. When I pressed her about Thomas Reed, she dodged questions, changed the subject. It was clear she was hiding something. The truth was fractured, like shattered glass reflecting a distorted version of who I was supposed to be. And in the middle of it all, I was still just a girl staring into the mirror, trying to reconcile the life I thought I had with the one I was born into. But now I knew one thing for sure. I wouldn't be erased again. The night I decided to confront everything was the night I finally stopped running from the shadows of my past. The fear that had wrapped itself around me for so long began to crack, replaced by a fierce, burning determination. I arranged a meeting with the private investigator one last time. I had collected every piece of evidence I could find: the birth certificate, the old photographs, the faded flyers, the sparse news articles, and his findings about Thomas Reed. I was ready to demand answers, to face the darkness lurking in the edges of my life. When I sat across from him in that small, cluttered office, the gravity of the truth hit me like a tidal wave. Nicole, my real mother, had lived a nightmare none of us deserved. She had escaped a dangerous man who had tried to erase her and me from existence. In desperation, she had made a heartbreaking choice: to give me up to someone she trusted, someone who promised safety. But that safety came with a price: my identity, my past, and the innocence I never had a chance to keep. My adoptive mother, despite her silence and shadows, had saved me from a fate even darker. Her fear and secrecy had been her way of protecting me, flawed and imperfect as it was. I realized then that my life was not a simple story of loss or betrayal. It was a testament to survival, to love in its many complicated forms. I was both Claire Martin and Emily Danvers, both the girl who grew up in Ohio and the child who vanished from Colorado Springs. Both lost and found. The truth no longer felt like a chain dragging me under. It was a key, one that unlocked every fractured piece inside me. For the first time in years, I felt whole. I stepped outside into the dawn, the sun warm on my face. The road ahead was uncertain, scarred by the past, but wide open. I would find Nicole someday. I would tell her my story and listen to hers. And no matter what came next, I knew this. I wasn't just a missing girl on some forgotten website. I was a survivor. I was Emily. And I was finally coming home.